Right. This is pre-recorded. This is a pre-recorded. So, but it will but I do not edit. So, speak your mind freely.
Okay. Now, did you already get to watch the? Did you already get to watch our movie?
I did. I have gone through. Let's see. There's some videos on RT. There's ABC.
Yeah.
You got a few different clips that I've had a chance to run through. So The World Is My Country.
Yes.
Is what we are conceptually talking about here, and I think it's a wonderful movement that you're putting together that, for listeners to understand, does have the support, because he's I think he stars in a documentary, doesn't he? Martin Sheen. Arthur? Okay, maybe a hiccup there. Can you hear me, Arthur?
I just switched to the right Wi-Fi. How's my sound now?
Sound is intact. I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I was just on the wrong Wi-Fi. I know in Skype how to, here, audio and video settings, how to make sure I'm using the right audio. Yeah, I'm using the right camera. And let me see what my audio is on. Audio, let me switch that to the, well, how's my audio? Because there's also, see if this is better. This is the better mic. How does this sound now? Did it get better when I switch to this mic?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just had to switch it to another mic. All right. Well, good to talk to you, Ian.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. So really, what you've put together here, The World Is My Country, is it could be rephrased, right? The world is our country, and so I think that's ideologically, this is what you're doing behind the philosophy and the movement of a fellow named Gary Davis, who Arthur, I'd never heard of him.
Yeah, well, he was a song and dance man back in the golden age of Broadway, and he was wowing audiences by doing Danny Kaye's double talk numbers and getting 13 curtain calls. All he wanted to do was, continue his Broadway career and make people laugh. But along came World War II, and he finds himself in a bomber plane ordered to bomb the city of Brandenburg. And his own brother has just been killed in the war. And he says, my God, why am I killing people in their homes and schools and factories? Just because they're on the wrong side of some invisible line. When I fly over it from my airplane, I can't even see it. And then he sees the footage of Hiroshima, and he says, my God, what if I'm recalled to active duty to bomb Moscow in a war that would end life on Earth? This is insane. I've got to do something. But what can I do? I'm just an actor. So, want to hear what he did?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, he went to Paris. The United Nations in 1948 was meeting in Paris because the building wasn't built yet on the East River. And so he pulls off this grand act of political comedy right there at the United Nations General Assembly. What he does is he leaps up in the middle of the session and he says, the nations you represent divide us and lead us to the brink of total war. He says, what we need is one government for one world, an election of, by, and for the people of this planet. And if you won't do it, step aside and a People's World Assembly will arise from our ranks to do it. Well, here's this guy interrupting the UN, and you see this in the old footage. Most of the delegates around him are actually applauding him. And in fact, the president even recognizes him. But what happens, of course, he's hauled away because you're not allowed to interrupt a UN session. But this rivets war-weary Europe. Europe is so fed up with war. They've just had 2 world wars. They're still in the devastation. People are picking through the ruins and ashes. And so they get so excited about this that Albert Camus, Albert Schweitzer, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Simone de Beauvoir, all these famous intellectuals come to his defense. And have a huge rally at the Velodrome, the big stadium that's like the Madison Garden of Paris, and 20,000 people rallied demanding that the United Nations recognize the rights of humanity. Now, this is on December 9th, 1948. On December 10th, the Soviets, who have been adamantly blocking the UN Declaration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that the U.S. delegate Eleanor Roosevelt proposed, they dropped their objection and they let it get passed unanimously. Now, Gary says in the film, we'll never know why, but on December 9th, we took over. We, the people, demanded our rights. And so it's a very interesting story. He inspired some of the leaders who went on to form the European Union and take down the borders that in the time since the European Union, whatever problems there may be with the European Parliament, whatever, people have disputes and so on. But in the 70 years since that was formed, now the single nation in the Union has fought a war with another nation. There have been civil wars, but that's when there was a dispute of two different, sovereignty people for the same place. But what Gary says is law stops war. I mean, inside the U.S., we don't fight wars between, we don't have wars between, California and Nevada. I mean, if they have a dispute, they take it to court. And so he basically makes the case that we need to do that, but we need to save ourselves from oppressive government by being government from the bottom up of the people of the planet.
Yeah, that's the whole idea behind a democracy, right? And a voting equality and voting and that sort of thing, which of course we conceptually received from Athens. What got you involved, Arthur? What got you involved in looking at the work, this activism from Gary Davis? And I've never heard the name. I've heard other Davis names, but I haven't heard of Gary Davis.
Well, it started with I knew Gary. I knew him as the fellow who was putting out these world passports, world ID documents, all based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I knew he was an activist, but I didn't know his amazing story until actually his son encouraged me to read his book, My Country is the World. And, it's an astounding book. It's filled with action and drama. And, as you'll see when you watch our film, it's almost like the script of a feature film. In fact, that was our first idea, to make a feature film about him, except the budget came out too high for Sony Pictures to do it. So we ended up doing a documentary. But this story is so much fun and so riveting. He was a song and dance man on a mission to save the world. And it's filled with, what Martin Sheen calls a roadmap to the better future, inspiring ideas that we need in our current world when we're so divided and separated, torn apart by our divisions.
Right. And so talk about Martin Sheen. And I want listeners to understand that this isn't the first time that you've done something like this. You have a history of working with Paul Newman's, but first talk about your work.
Yes. Okay. Well, first we went, of course, to his managers and his agents, and they all said, "Oh, no, he's not interested." Then we used various networking, got to his personal assistant. She said, "No, he's not interested." But finally, we actually got a friend of a friend got his wife to watch it, and she, of course, showed it to him. And I get a call almost midnight. My wife says, "Who could be calling us in the middle of the night?" And it's Martin Sheen here. I love the film. I just fell in love with Gary when he could have power. When he rallied all those people to the Velodrome and people started calling on him to be the leader, and he said, "I'm not your leader. It's all of us, folks. That's the whole idea. We want to get away from one person, leading others. We've got to find it in each of us." And he said, "When I heard that, I just fell in love with the guy. What can I do to help you?"
Oh, that's fantastic. And how's the reception been? What's been the reception? It sounds like.
Well, right now we're on 100 public broadcasting stations across the country. You can go to theworldismycountry.com. Sometimes people forget to put in the "the," it doesn't work. Theworldismycountry.com, and there you can click on the public TV stations and see all the broadcasts. You can see if it's coming up in your area, and if you missed it or if it's not in your area, you can get a ticket to watch it right here on your computer, right here and now at home. Just click on the link through there, and you'll be watching it tonight. So anybody can watch it, and they can share it with friends. And if you have a group that wants to see it and have a Q&A with me, the director, afterwards, I'd be glad to talk. Gary sadly passed away at 2013, but he was 90. He was 4 days short of his 93rd birthday. So he lived a good long life as a citizen of no nation, only the world, for 65 years of that life. He lived as a citizen of the entire planet.
Wow. And talk a little bit more about that. I see you showed that on the screen there, that vaccine, or excuse me, not vaccine, the world passport there.
Yeah.
Talk a little more about that.
All right. Well, Gary came to this realization. He said, look, if the Declaration of Independence says it is the right of the people to institute new government, and he said, that's an incredible concept. Does that just mean old guys in gray wigs, or does that mean you and I? And, and then that same idea we see in the constitution of almost every country, that is based on the will of the people. And then we even see that the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Independence, says the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. So Gary said, well, what in the heck are we doing, knocking our heads against the wall, trying to beg and plead our government leaders to make peace when they can't do it? They're on the wrong civic level. Their loyalty is to the part, not the whole. And so we see that in the world, just all the governments, all the empires lying, fooling their people, because it's all, we have to do this to fight this war with the other. The exact same things they would never do within their country are suddenly legal outside. Gary said, can you believe this? In every country in the world, murder is illegal, but in the world, it's not. You get medals for it. You get rewarded. You can kill people outside of national borders. That's why they set up that torture center for Guantanamo, just outside of our national boundaries, and they can do anything they want. It's incredible. There's no law at the global level. So when Gary asked the UN, to do that, Eleanor Roosevelt 4 days later put out a My Day column in which she, said, well, the UN's really just a place for nations to get together to let off steam. And she kind of chided Gary for interrupting and so on. She said, but really, she said, how much better it would be if Mr. Davis would set up his own international government. Here's the President of the United States, the President's wife, a UN delegate, putting it back on him. He said a People's World Assembly will arise from our ranks to do it. And I think she was kind of subtly, a little half tongue-in-cheek, but half saying, hey, if you guys want to do that, go ahead. We're not stopping you. It is the will of the people that create government. So he says, well, okay, if we create government, and if this Universal Declaration of Independence lays out certain rights, like Article 13B, everyone has a right to leave any country and return to their own, then why not issue, isn't that really a mandate? It even says at the beginning, every individual, every organ of society has to enforce that. Isn't it a mandate for us to go ahead and start enforcing that? So he went down to Washington, D.C., and he set up this World Service Authority that issues world documents based on that declaration. And this operates right there in Washington, D.C. They put out world passports, world IDs, world birth certificates, and it's been controversial. At one point, he had a case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court over it, and the government lost the file. They couldn't find the file. Well, what do you think that means? I mean, the point is, how can they say there is no law outside of nations? So how can they say it can't be a violation of U.S. law? It's not even in the U.S. It's outside the U.S. I mean, there was no way they could handle it. They couldn't deal with it. So they keep issuing these. Nobody stops them, or anyway, they comply with the laws about vetting people who get it first and making sure they're not faking, having people put their fingerprint and real IDs, so it's not a bunch of bots or something. But you can get these world documents now. Any nation can refuse or accept a passport, and even the U.S. passport during COVID, people haven't been accepting. It used to be at one point, over the course of the years, 99%, over 184 of the world's 193 nations that are in the UN have stamped it at one time or another, put visas, exit stamps. But right now, it's really almost impossible to travel with it, very difficult, but it's so useful. So many refugees, for instance, we get to this country for and you want to get into the courthouse to have your hearing held for wanting to apply for to be recognized for anyway, even to get into a courthouse to have your case heard, you have to have an ID. So people use it for opening bank accounts, getting to courthouses, getting housing. So many useful things, which you'll see if you go to our podcast, the People Powered Planet podcast. You'll see two podcasts with David Gallup, who heads this World Service Authority. He's a human rights attorney in Washington, D.C., and you can find out from our website and from that podcast how you can get one and how you can help stand up to honor the fact that we are citizens of one small globe here.
Well, I think I am interested, and I'm going to personally look into that further. Have you gotten the support of anyone else, the colleagues in your vicinity there in Los Angeles and Hollywood? Any other leading industry people come out to align with you and Martin?
Well, during our film, you will see that I went to a press conference with Leonardo DiCaprio, who had an 11th hour press conference. He was saying, "Humanity, wake up! We're standing at the 11th hour of a midnight of unimaginable catastrophe. In fact, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist says we're 100 seconds from such a devastating end of humanity due to either climate change or nuclear war." And so at this press conference, I said to DiCaprio, I said, "Well, in all the movies, just when things look the direst, just when there seems like no hope, a hero comes along and saves the day." I said, "Who's the hero who's going to save the day?" And he said, and you'll see this in the film. Actually, I should leave that as a cliffhanger and get you all to watch the film and watch for yourself. See what Leonardo DiCaprio said when you come to theworldismycountry.com and go ahead and log in to get yourself a ticket and watch this incredible movie.
So you're getting the attention of people like Martin Sheen, and talk a little bit about, talk a little bit about the work that you've done with Paul Newman.
Yes. Well, Paul was fantastic to work with. I was working with a group of retired admirals and generals in Washington, D.C., who were speaking out for peace. Admiral Larocque was a nuclear war planner in the White House. Nuclear war planner in the Pentagon when his kids were marching on the Pentagon protesting the Vietnam War. And this caused a little shakeup in his family and a little rethinking. And he began to think about, what is this I'm doing? Planning the extinction of humanity? I mean, there's no way you can fight and win a nuclear war. The only way that I can be true to my oath of office, which was to protect and defend the United States of America, the only way to do that is to prevent a nuclear war. So he started this center with admirals and generals saying we absolutely must go on a path to peace. It's what Kennedy said at the UN. He said the weapons of war must be abolished or they'll abolish us. And so out of this, Paul Newman joined the board, and he was great. I filmed him in our film that we made called War Without Winners. You can actually watch that at warwithoutwinners.com. It's a wonderful, inspiring movie that is both experts, but also just ordinary people on the street in the U.S. and the Soviet Union. So often we paint this picture of this evil enemy, and we got it person to person. Here's people on the street on both sides saying the same thing, feeling the same thing, having the same fears and the same hopes for their children in the future. So do watch warwithoutwinners.com. A war would truly be a war without winners, and if we want to be winners, we have to be winners without war, winners with peace.
The last person I think I had on my show from Hollywood, and I'm putting you into that Hollywood. I don't know if you're in Hollywood or not, but certainly Martin Sheen is a guy named John Barber, who's considered the pioneer of reality TV. The question I have for you at this point, Arthur, is just some comments for viewers on what they can do to make the country a better place, if you will. What's your view of the past 18 months with the lockdowns and COVID-19 and the vaccinations? Do you have any comments in regards to that?
Well, I would say that the one thing that this epidemic shows us is that military budgets and national security won't save us. It doesn't matter how many It didn't save us from 9/11. Right in the film, we have a beautiful scene of Gary standing in the rubble of 9/11 saying, folks, all of the bombs, all of the missiles, all the nuclear weapons couldn't protect me, and they can't. It's a false illusion to think that we gain security by fighting wars. Like right now, we see in the Middle East wars that have gone back and forth for centuries, and one side kills, and the other side kills, and the other side kills. And each time they think, oh, somehow this is going to solve the problem. You know what the reality is? Killing bad guys doesn't solve problems. What solves the only way to vanquish, if you kill a bad guy, then his family hates you, and they're going to come back and be more bad guys, and you're going to be more bad guys. The only way that really, and that may work in the movies, killing bad guys, solving problems. In real life, the only way to totally vanquish, totally eliminate the enemy, and I don't mean to be religious here, but it was what Jesus said: love your enemy. That's the thing that actually dissolves and disappears enemies. Take Japan after World War II. Here was this evil enemy and all the things they did. In Germany, well, what did we do? Somehow we had an administration with the foresight to start the Marshall Plan. We rebuilt their countries. We loved them. And they were so stunned. My wife's talked to people in Japan who said, like, we thought we would get, treated like people we occupied, and we were terrible to them. And you just treated us so well. We felt we owe you a debt of gratitude, and we had to make ourselves the best we could to create good technology. And that's why we have all these iPhones and all this technology. They knocked themselves out to prove they were worthy of the love we gave them after that war. And that's how you actually make yourself more secure. If after 9/11 we had capitalized on all the love pouring in from around the world of people wanting to support us, and instead of launching this war on terror, had launched a big thing to really make America the best of all it can be, then people gravitate to us. We don't have to. They don't gravitate to us because we repress them with bombs and missiles and torturing people in Guantanamo and around the world, and dropping bombs all over the world, and having military bases all over the world. That doesn't, and overthrowing democratic governments because they're not supporting our big corporations. That doesn't make us more secure, our corporate interests. That makes us less secure. And in the long run, it also deprives those companies of the true abundance and happiness we'll have when we do develop what Gary called the people-powered planet.
Yeah, you're doing some great work, and I can't agree with you more. These military conflicts are mindless, and I always say on my show that violence is a very weak form of resolution. I personally never joined the military for that reason. I do believe in self-defense, but I believe that wars and physical conflict can always be averted and avoided. And so I commend you for the work that you're doing, and certainly happy from that standpoint that Gary did the work that he did. Have you gotten any support from people in the United Nations, for instance?
Well, one of the people you hear in the film is Barbara Mueller, whose husband was the Undersecretary of the United Nations for the Deputy Undersecretary of, or I guess Undersecretary of the United Nations for, it's called Assistant Attorney General of the United Nations. And he actually has a beautiful comment that she mentions about really feeling that Gary helped inspire the leaders of the European Union. We would like to have more connection with the UN. We'd love to have a screening there. If anybody listening has connections there and wants to help us out with that, we would love to be. I think that there's a real hunger there for finding solutions above the nations that divide us. So many of the delegates are frustrated with this current system that's really not bringing us together as a planet, and I think they'd be open to hearing some new thoughts.
Yeah, what do you? And as we wind down here, and I appreciate your time, Arthur. What are your thoughts on what is supporting that? For instance, if we go with Vietnam and we go with Iraq and Afghanistan, and we think, hey, these are corporation interests in natural resources. What is your thought on that? What is driving? If we apply that, what is driving this kind of movement? Is it man's kind of inability to cope with greed? What do you think?
I think it's broken political economic systems. You see, In 1776, it was a brilliant idea to send people by horse and buggy to a distant city to represent us, to create, if you were trying to create a democracy back then, you didn't even have the telephone, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have any of that. So how are you going to do it? You had to send people to meet in the same room. Well, in our film, Gary says, hey, folks, today we can all meet in the same room, the global room. And what he called for is a totally new kind of system for how we govern. He said this old win-lose democracy doesn't work. It was a great advance again back then. Originally, we had a meme back then, Robert's Rules of Order. This guy Robert created this, and then all the world people started using it in their clubs and their this is before the internet. They used it in their clubs and in their schools and in their organizations, parliaments, also parliamentary procedures. Well, we can invent something much newer and better in this age, and he called it syntegrity. And it's the idea that if you get a group of say you have groups like these Zoom meetings we've been having, but you have people from opposite sides of political issues, Arabs and Israelis, the Palestinians and the people of Gaza and the people in Israel, and you get them into this same room, and you don't say who's right and who's wrong, because then you're going to go. But if you say, okay, let's have the set of rules for how we're going to talk. First, we want each person to talk about, a little bit of their personal story, and then what are your hopes and dreams for the future? What would you like to see? What's the future you picture? What's the biggest thing that, the biggest pain you're feeling? And you start connecting on that kind of global, that level. You start finding people come to synergy. I mean, there's so many wonderful movies about that. There's one called Free Trip to Egypt, where this fellow went to Trump rallies with a sign, Free Trip to Egypt. And of course, some people spurn him, but he got Trump supporters to go live with with people who were Islamic, and they'd fall in love with these families. They, gee, I wish all Islamic people, I wish all Jewish people were like you. They connect at that human level. And if you create this system where you have these small groups like that, all interacting, and they're all being amalgamated into the next group, just as on Google, you can put a word in, and before you finish typing that word, you've searched all the information banks of the world and come up with just the answer you're looking for. Well, we need something that takes all the highest and best wisdom of people and amalgamates it into the will of the people globally. And once we create that will of the people, that sovereignty of the whole, that'll have incredible power. I mean, think of it. Right now, there's no way we can vote or have any say in what goes on globally. Let's create it, folks. We can't wait for governments to give it to us. They're not going to do it. We, the people, have to do it. And that's why this is such a startling documentary and story. And that's what we work on every week in the People Powered Planet. We have weekly discussions, Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, about, how are we going to do that, folks? How can we carry out this incredible vision that Gary Davis left us with?
Well, and I like the illustration there. The one that catches my eye is the kid with the missing teeth. The youngster with his. That's great.
I got a little crack there, but I'm going to put a new one in.
Did you draw that? You drew that?
No. We have a wonderful art. Throughout our movie, there are wonderful cartoons like this, and they're by Mark was a friend of Gary's for 25 years. He cartooned him. Gary had a newsletter called World Citizen News, and Mark would be the one doing the illustrations. And he's been drawing cartoons of Gary, and great cartoons with Gary for a quarter of a century, more than that, a lifetime cartoonist and illustrator. And we were so fortunate in our film. Mostly every scene in Gary's life, we found incredible historic footage documenting. But whenever there wasn't footage to show something, we had a cartoonist do it, because here Gary is an entertainer, a song and dance man. So we decided, let's make the illustrations just as much fun as the story that Gary's telling.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Arthur Kantogus. Arthur, what's next for you? Is this pushing the momentum? You got a lot of momentum behind this. You're going to keep going with this. You got something else you're going to work on? And what's going on with Martin?
Well, okay, this film, I think, definitely we want to jump on the bandwagon of having on PBS stations across the country, to take it onto streaming platforms, to take it out to other nations around the world and develop that. We also, my long-term vision, and I'd love to find more people to rally with us to support this, and that is to create a ongoing, like a Netflix series leading into kind of a transmedia project where we actually have kids and others dwelling in that future that we'd all like to live in. You know, we have so many movies telling us all the horrors we can face ahead, and we have so many stories about apocalypse, but we really don't have a good vision of what is it like? What is it we want to move toward? What's the future that would be the bright future we'd all want to live in? And you know, our visions help create our reality. I learned years ago, meditating in friends meeting, that you know what if you visualize strongly enough what you want, it's more likely to happen in your life. And that's when I said, why am I constantly making movies like War Without Winners about what we don't want, nuclear war, or The Day After? I did the nuclear war research for The Day After. You know, about films we don't want, futures we don't want. Why don't we create visions of the future we do want? And because visions have great power. So my long-term vision is that we will create a vision, a workable vision of really a workable world, a world that works for everyone, and that we would love to have allies in that as we develop that. So that's the bigger picture of where I'd like to go.
Fantastic. So thank you for joining the program, and listeners, obviously you can go to theworldismycountry.com and get more information, and there they can reach out to you, I'd imagine, or at least some of your administrative support. You have any closing comments? Something you pretty much summed it up in a very nice way there for listeners and viewers. Do you have any closing comments? Something to leave in the
Just one other thing. Do go to peoplepoweredplanet.com without the hyphen, just one word, peoplepoweredplanet.com, to join our weekly discussions in how we build this world we choose. And yeah, I just want to thank the viewers and turn back to you. The answer to that question, you know, the hero really has to be you, all of us, and we have to join together to make this better world. So thank you for your interview, and looking forward to carrying on.
Thank you. And I look forward to reaching back out to you. And thanks to your publicist, who I don't know if you know this, but she had approached me, and I had never heard of her, and I'm very glad that you and I connected.
Great, excellent. Okay, I'd love to talk to you offline when you get off camera here at the end of the show. Thank you.
Okay.